Hello everyone, welcome back to chapter 2 of tutorial series. In this demonstration, we'll dive into a virtual networking and we'll set up a virtual network step by step. So let me give you a brief overview of what we'll cover in this session. So first we'll create a virtual network as a foundation of our setup. Then we'll set up a firewall within this virtual network to control and secure the access. Then we'll create a subnet in this virtual network where we'll deploy our web app. So in that we'll deploy a virtual machine and we'll configure it. Then we'll install and configure the Nginx web server on that created virtual machine. During the demonstration, we'll test how end users access is managed and how firewall rules restricts or allow connections. We'll explore the process of creating and configuring a virtual machine. And finally, we'll connect to virtual machine using the Azure Bastion. By the end of this series, you will have a clear understanding of setting up and managing the virtual network in Azure. So let's get started. So first step, let's create a virtual machine. So I have logged into this Azure portal. I'm using the free subscription. So let's create the virtual network first, and then we'll create step by step. So then we'll create a firewall and then we'll set up a virtual machine. So if you see, if once you log into this Azure portal, you will see the Azure services. If the services is not present, so then you can just search. So I think virtual network is already present. So let's click on this virtual network. It will open a new window where we'll fill the details. So let's click on the create virtual network. So it will again open the details window where we need to fill the details. So if you see, it will open this create virtual network window, and there are a couple of tabs that we need to fill the data in that. So if you see in this subscription, as I said, I am using the free trial. So now let's go to the resource group. In my previous video, I already mentioned, so any service or any if you need to create or if you want to create any service in this Azure, the so resource group creation is mandatory. So let's create a resource group as demo and click on OK. Then let's enter the virtual network name. So we'll enter demo VNet. We'll give the name as demo VNet, and then let's select the region. So I'll use the central India, and then let's click on next or go to the security tab. In that, as I mentioned, so we'll use the Azure Bastion to connect to the virtual machine. So let's click on the Azure Bastion option, and in that let's the Azure Bastion host name, that is demo VNet Bastion, and then let's cross check it for adding the public IP. So we'll use the standard, and then let's click on the OK, and then let's scroll down a little bit. Then we'll set up a Azure firewall here. So let's click on this checkbox Azure firewall. It will again open some or give some more details that we need to fill. So Azure firewall name demo VNet firewall, that is automatically populated. Then the tier, that is standard, or we can use as a basic. So I'll keep the most of setting as is. So I'll use the tier as a standard. Then the policy, so let's create demo VNet policy, and then the Azure public IP, Azure firewall public IP address. So currently we are not using this, but we can keep this as is. And then we'll not using this Azure network protection, but basically this is used for hiding, or if some attackers try to access or hiding the multiple loads on your web app or any app. So this option is used to protect this attacks, unnecessary attacks on the virtual machines or VNet on the network. So let's go to the IP address. And so in this chapter 1, I already covered the CIDR. So this is the IP address range. So if you in this we'll see we have selected the default range, that is public 16, so it allocate the 65,536 addresses. But if you can change, for example, let's 13, it will allow these addresses, and if you change like 6, it will allow this. So I'll use the default one, that is 16, and then I will not change anything in this tab. So let's click on next or go to the next tab, and I'll move it. I will not add anything in the net. So let's click on review plus create button. It will validate the details that we entered, and once the validation is done, then we'll click on the create button. So then it will start the virtual machine creation process. So it will show the entered data that we entered. Or so let's cross the validation is done. So let's click on the create. It will start the initializing deployment of virtual network, and it will open a new window where we can track the status and we can check what are the processes that going. So if you see, we demo VNet firewall, it's created, the bastion is created. Now demo VNet firewall policies creating, and the demo VNet virtual network is in progress. So deployment is in progress. It will take some time, but you can check the status, what are the process, what are the uh, details that is coming while creating the deployment or while creating the virtual network. You can check in this window. So now deployment is done for the virtual network. So let's click on the go to resources. It will show us the overview window where we can see the details of created virtual network. So if you see the resource group, the location, and then the DNS server name and virtual network ID. So now let's go to the home page again, and let's quickly create a virtual machine. So let's click on the virtual machine service, and then let's click on the create button. It will ask for the virtual machine creation. It will again open a new window where we need to fill the details while creating the virtual machine. So let's So if you see the subscription that is by default selected, that is free, let's click on the resource group. Let's select the demo resource group, then enter the virtual machine name. So let's enter VM, and then the region. So that is auto populated while creating the virtual network. We have selected the central India, then the availability zone in the zone 1. So I have already covered in this chapter 1 what is availability zone, how it is divided in the virtual network. So you can relate to that topic in this while creating the virtual machine. Then the security type, that is trusted virtual machine. So I have selected this image as Debian. So if you see in this, it is auto populated like free service eligible. So you can make sure while selecting these as you are using this free subscription. Then let's scroll down. Then on the size, I'll keep this default size as is. Then on the authentication type, I'll use the password. So let's click on the radio as a password, and let's enter the username. So I'll use the name, that is, I'll keep the username as VM, and then enter the password. And then let's scroll down a little bit, and then on the select inbound port, so let's click on this HTTP checkbox. So it is required to set up the inbound rules. So let's go to the next tab. In the disk, we don't need to fill anything in this. Let's go to the network tab, and in that, let's select the virtual network. So it is auto populated, like we have created the virtual network as demo VNet, and the subnet, that is auto populated. But in that we will not use, or we will not set up a public IP of this virtual machine. So I'll use this none. But if you want to access this access the virtual machine with public IP, you can select this. But in this demonstration, we'll try to access our virtual machine with the firewall. So I'll use this public IP none. Then let's scroll down, and let's select this delete NIC when virtual machine is deleted checkbox as true. So it is required. Once we delete the virtual machine, it will delete its associated resources. Then let's go to the management tab. We don't need to fill anything in this. And let's go to this create and review tab. It will validate the details that we entered, and once the validation is done, then let's click on the create button. So let's click on the create. It will create a virtual machine. If you see in the right corner, initializing now the deployment, submitting the deployment, and it will again open a new window where we can see the status. Deployment is in progress. It will take some time for the deployment is done. So let's go to again on resource. So now our virtual machine is created, and if you see the public IP section, it is blank. So because we have not selected, we selected as a none, so the public IP for this virtual machine is not associated or created. So now let's connect to the virtual machine. So as I said, we'll connect through the Bayesian. So let's click on the connects option. There are two options with this RDP and then connect with Bayesian. So in the previous video we have connected through this RDP, but now let's go to this Bayesian and then let's click on this option. It will open a new window where we need to fill the username that we enter, that is VM, and then just enter the password that we set while creating the virtual machine. And then let's click on create. It will open a pop-up. Let's allow the pop-up, and let's again click on the connect. It will open a new window where we'll connect through Bayesian. So now we are connected to our Bayesian. So in that, what we'll do, we'll create a Nginx web server, and in that we'll create one HTML static page. So I have already copied couple of commands. So I have installed this Nginx web server on the virtual machine, and then I have created one static HTML page where we just print these headings, and then we restart the Nginx. So let's go to the firewall again. So now our Nginx server is created on the virtual machine. So now we'll set up a firewall. As we see in the previous image at the starting of this demonstration, what we'll do, we'll set up a firewall. Once, for example, if any user try to access this virtual machine, it need to be bypass the firewall, and then it will navigate, or he can access this virtual machines. So now our Nginx is installed in this virtual machine. So now next question is that how I can access this Nginx app on the virtual machine. So for that, what we'll do, we'll set up a rules in such a way that, so if user try to access this virtual machine, he need to call the firewall IP first, and then it will navigate to the if the user access is granted, then it will navigate to the virtual machine. So now let's set up a firewall. So let's click on the firewall service, or if a service is not present, then just click on search here. So let's click on the firewalls, and in that, so if you remember, while creating the VNet, we set up a checkbox that is to set up a firewall. So it created while creating the virtual network. So it will open a firewall window where overview page. In that, let's click on the firewall policy option. So it will open a new window. In that, let's go to the setting, and in that we have to define this DNAT rule. So in that, let's click on the add rule collection where we need to set up some rules. So in that, we'll enter the name that is demo firewall, and then we'll enter the priority that is 100. So what is so the priority 100 means it is start from the 100 priority, and then let's click on the add. It will create or adding the rules collection. And once that is added, then we need to set up a rule again. We have created a simple DNAT rule collection. So let's add one more rule. So let's click on this add rule. It will open a new window where we need to set up some DNAT rule. So let's the collection group that we created, then let's click on the rule collection that we just created, that is demo firewall, and then click a rule name. So let's enter VM wall rule, and then wall, and then the source type, that is IP address, and source IP address. So as we discussed, we'll in our case I'll use my IP address, but let's check the IP address. So for that, let's click on the new browser and just enter my IP address. It will, let's click on this, it will show the IP address. Let's copy this IP address and then place enter. So the source IP address, so the user that, or the only user that can access this firewall. So I have added my IP address. So if you enter the star, so which means any IP addresses are allowed to access the firewall. So let's paste my IP address and the destination IP address. So in that, the destination IP address, which means the firewall IP address. So let's go to the firewall where we created a firewall, and then demo VNet firewall. And in that, let's click on the public IP firewall. It will open a new window where we need to copy the public IP address of the firewall. So if you see the IP address, that is 4.247.160.106, let's copy this and then enter in this destination IP address, and the port and the protocol, that is TCP, and the destination port. So you can add any destination. So in that case, I'll use the 3000 port. Then the translation type, that is again an IP address, and the translated address, which means in this translation address we need to enter the virtual machine's IP address. So again, let's go to the virtual machine. Let's click on the home and again go to the virtual machine. So in that, let's go to the network setting, and in this network setting, let's copy the private IP address of our virtual machine. Let's copy this and then paste it in this, and the translated port. So in this, we using the Nginx, so the default port for the Nginx web server, that is 80. And then let's click on the save. It will create a rule for the collection that we created. So it will create a rule. So if you see the status, that is adding a rule collection, once the rule is created, then we'll try to access the Nginx app using the firewall. So now we have successfully added the rules. Now it's time to access the Nginx app. So let's click on the firewall, and we have to copy the firewall IP address. So let's click on the public IP option again, and then copy the IP address of firewall. Let's copy this, and then let's go to the new tab and let's enter. And then if you remember, we entered the port number, that is 3000, while setting the DNAT rule, and let's click on the enter. If you see, you can access our Nginx app where we printed this: hello, Nginx is working, welcome to the simple HTML page served by Nginx. So that's all. We created a virtual network and we access this Nginx app where we created a static HTML page. So we have successfully set up the firewall rules, allowing specific user to access the Nginx app through their browsers. And now you can experiment further by adding or modifying the inbound rules, restricting access and exploring the various configuration to see how it works. So that's all about the virtual networking. So let's do a quick recap what we have seen so far in this demonstration chapter 2 video. So we have created a virtual network and we set up a firewall to control our access. Within this network, we configure a subnet. In that subnet, we deployed a virtual machine and installed Nginx web server. We created a simple HTML page to demonstrate and set up using this. So using Azure Bastion, we securely connected to our virtual machine, and finally we tested and adjusted the firewall rules and allow user to access this virtual machine. So that's all. This wraps up a demonstration of virtual networking. Combined with what we learned in the chapter 1, you now have a solid foundation for working with Azure Virtual Network. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this tutorial helpful, please like, share and subscribe to support the channel. Your support motivates us to create more valuable content. So until next time, have a wonderful day.